In today's episode of Today in World War II, April 19th, Japan informs the U.S. that we don't have any aggressive intentions towards the Dutch East Indies. The French pooped a bed in the mountains of Norway. General Wavell flies to Athens and says, "Yeah, I guess we can't hold Greece after all." 450 British commandos raid Axis forces in Libya. General Doolittle is awarded the Medal of Honor by President Roosevelt. The only recorded attack on Holocaust trains heading to Auschwitz happened today. The Battle of the Warsaw Ghetto starts today. The British fleet in the Pacific attacks the Dutch East Indies, and finally, Soviet and Polish forces win a key battle before Berlin. Let's get started. All right, so on April 19, 1940, the Japanese diplomatically informed the United States that we don't have any aggressive intention towards the Dutch East Indies. Yeah, I believe that. Uh, Also, on this date, what, 40 years later, 40, 45, oh, actually 30 something years later, serial killer Ted Bundy wrote in his diary that he had no intention of kidnapping, raping, and murdering young women in the Pacific Northwest. That's the quote Forrest Gump. That's all I have to say about that. On April 19, 1940, the French do something solid. They did a great thing. Sacre bleu, Vive la France, all that stuff, Camembert. Um, they sent three battalions of French mountain troops, and they arrived at the destination in Namsos, Norway. Finally, we have a smart decision by the Allies in 1940. They send troops, they send specialty troops that are perfectly trained and ready to fight in mountainous areas. But they were sent without skis, without their mules, and without anti-aircraft weapons. Oh my gosh. I try so hard to defend you, French people. I really do, but that was just look, the Brits weren't any better, pretty much okay. I'd say the whole Allied response was a fiasco, and it's foreshadows how unprepared the Britain and the French were to fight, the Nazis, the Wehrmacht, and so on and so forth. So um, we know what's going to happen. But you know what? Losing the first part does not mean you're out of the action. You lose the entire war. And everybody, including the U.S., we made our blunders too. Thankfully, we got our poop together and won. On April 19, 1941, General Wavell, who was in charge of Mediterranean forces for the British Commonwealth, he flew to Athens. He met with King George II, and he and the king agreed that the Allies could not hold Greece and they should start evacuating immediately to Crete to prevent further destruction of the country. What a disastrous decision that was by Churchill, if you think about it. It harkens back to the disastrous decision he made in World War One in the Balkans when he made just an incredibly stupid decision to invade Gallipoli in Turkey. And if you want to know about how bad that one was, go watch one of Mel Gibson's early movies, Gallipoli. And all there's a lot of Aussies that fought in Gallipoli, and it wasn't a very good. It was a good movie, but it was a very bad experience for them. But again, it's like the old adage: don't get involved in a land war in Asia. Well, don't get involved too deeply in the Balkans, especially if you don't have overwhelming force, which the Brits did not have. On April 19th, 1941, 450 British commandos conducted an amphibious raid against Axis forces in Bardia, Libya. They went after Italian supply dump and coastal artillery battery, I should say, and they were good. They did accomplish their mission. Bravo. The commandos generally did a very good job on their raids. They were able to evacuate most of their contingent. However, 67 commandos were captured uh, because they got lost and they went to the wrong beach. It's interesting if you think about this. 450 commandos conducted an amphibious raid. Um, SAS had less troops and they did much better job um, in North Africa than the commandos did. Just saying, just saying. On April 19th, 1942, after the Doolittle raid, the day after the raid, actually, uh, Franklin Roosevelt awarded him the Medal of Honor, and my gosh, he deserved it. First of all, training those Army B-25 pilots to be able to take off from a carrier pretty quickly, that was one thing. But I mean, the bravery, it was essentially a suicide mission. They were fortunate that as many of them survived the raid as they did. And, one thing that is not talked about very much at all, and it's unfortunate, is that yes, it was a huge moral victory. It boosted morale in the United States. It had unintended positive consequences for the US because it provoked Yamamoto to be a little bit reckless and go after Midway, which of course we know how that ended up. But very few Westerners know who paid the price for that decision. It was the Chinese civilians. The Japanese massacred around 250,000 Chinese citizens in the areas where the flyers were. They landed, crash landed, parachuted, and a lot of them were the Chinese helped get to Chiang Kai-shek's territory. So just remember that when we think about the Doolittle raid. On April 19th, 1943, the only time any country's resistance underground movements tried to actively interdict a shipment of transport of Jews um, to Auschwitz to be murdered happened today. It was Belgian and Jewish underground movements attacked a transport of Jews from the Mechelen transit camp in Belgium. They were able to rescue 150 Jews, but 220 died in the process. But you think about it, those 220 were going to die anyway, so at least there was a fighting chance to get out, and some did. But what's sad about this was that it was the only time anybody, including the American and British high command, did anything to try to interdict or get in the way of the transport of millions of Jews to be slaughtered in concentration camps. And on April 19th, 1943, the the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto happened. The SS were planning to go in and get the rest of the Jews out of Warsaw. Himmler had ordered the ghettos, all the ghettos, to be liquidated. They thought that it was going to be a cakewalk. They sent police troops, the Waffen SS, into the ghetto, accompanied by a tank. And let me tell you this, the so-called helpless Jews, they fought back and they put the tank out of action with homemade pipe bombs and they drove the SS out of the ghetto. And at dawn, the people of Warsaw were stupefied to see the blue and white flag of Israel, the Star of David, flying from the top of buildings, as well as the Polish red and white flag flying over the ghetto. They resisted in the Warsaw Ghetto longer than Poland resisted in 39. I'm just saying. In April 1944, uh, Admiral Sir James Somerville has a new fleet. Remember, his fleet in 42 was sent packing all the way to Kenya by the Japanese, and now they were able to resupply. Situation was better. So they had the USS Saratoga, they had the HMS Illustrious, two aircraft carriers who were escorted, obviously, with their company cruisers and um, destroyers, and they launched a very devastating raid against the oil refinery at Sabang in Sumatra, and so now we see the British fleet starting to make its presence known in the eastern side of the Pacific, and it will then they're going to obviously merge with the American fleets off Okinawa, and they'll do a great job there. And finally, April 19th, 1945, Soviet and Polish forces won the Battle of Silo Heights. These were elevated terrain that fronted the Berlin, and that was the last major defense area that was easily defendable. And they, again, I tell you what, they took so, I mean, they caused so many casualties on the Soviet side. But what are you going to do, right? I mean, I talked to a German infantryman who fought in the Eastern Front, and I told him, I said, what was it like? He said, you mow down one attack, and the second one comes. Then the 10th one comes, and the 12th one comes. There was always another attack. He said we ran out of bullets. We couldn't kill them faster than they kept coming. That's what you get when you have hatred and an inexhaustible supply of men, and that's what the Soviets had. And that's it today. I have an exhaustible supply of stuff to talk about today, so I'm done. I'll see you tomorrow.